Now, Andreas Gurler, you are effectively our host here in Berlin. Yeah. Deputy Director General of the Federal Ministry of Economics and Energy. Now, I know that you were launching your 4.0 program yesterday, but before we talk about that, can I ask you to sort of give it a sort of vision of the future, the way you see it? Paint a picture of how you think that ICT and small industry and how Europe's going to look in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah. I think ICT is one of the major innovation force for innovation, and I think we have seen the figures this morning. 70% in the medical sector, for example, comes from innovation comes from ICT. 50% in the car sector. So you can imagine this is really a trend. ICT is a driving force for innovation, and this will continue in the future. And we see now really a paradigm change regarding our industry, and that is for Germany very important, but I think also for many other European countries. We have a strong industrial base here, and now we see that the internet comes into play, that it changes the processes, it changes the products too. So we have on both sides, we have smart products, we have smarter technologies, production technologies, and we have to try to make Europe as a lead market for both, for smart products and for smart production. And this is what my vision is, that we try to do our best to strengthen the efforts of the Commission, of the Member States, to reach this goal. And after that, I think the next point will be smart services. If you have a memory in the things, we talk about Internet of Things, everything is addressed by IPv6, by Internet Protocol, and I think everything gets a memory in the future, and therefore you can collect data, you can find out analytics, you can do analytics on this data. You need big data to do that, and then you have the opportunity to build new business models, to new services. That will be the next step after this. So that's maybe the vision from my point of view.
Because obviously some of those things that you've already said threw up some issues, but we will look at those in a minute. I mean, you mentioned about a strong industrial base. Germany never really lost its sense of industry, did it? Whereas some countries did.
Yeah, we have now more than 20% of the GDP is related to industry, and we have a strong machine tool industry, car industry. We have 15 million workers in the industry, in the industrial sector. That's really a large number. So for us, it is very important to look that we can keep this position, that we can enlarge it, and if you, it was mentioned yesterday also to bring back to some extent production to Germany or to Europe, and I think that is there are opportunities. We have seen yesterday this example coming up from Adidas, from a shoemaking company. And because of the fashion cycles, you need zero distance. If you have to wait for 6 weeks that the shoes come from Asia, and the labor costs are not so low in Asia by now, and the share of the labor cost doesn't play such a role than in the past, then if you have this zero distance, it is important to have production plants here. And what is funny, they have stopped producing shoes, for example, Adidas, it was mentioned yesterday, in the 80s because of the wage costs, and now they can do it on a green slate. It is that they have no legacy. They can start from scratch to build up new plant. That's really a choice, and maybe this can be a model also for other European countries which have no industries or little industry by now, to gain from this situation, for example, in these shoe or textile industries.
And for people who weren't here yesterday and people who aren't so familiar, just briefly tell us about the 4.0 initiative, what you hope to achieve with it.
Yeah, we have in the Industry 4.0 initiative, we launched a program, a call like the European Commission also does, and we have more than 100 applications for this call, and we selected 18 projects now, and we have 4 clusters. First cluster is service robotics, and the second cluster is automation technologies, then 3D, which is also important, not only because of simulation, as we have seen this morning, but also to 3D production, 3D printing. And the fourth one, you might be surprised, it's a smart home, but I think it is important. If you look, for example, at the robotics and the possibilities to code for industrial applications, you can also use these experience, these technologies for doing the same for the smart home. If you look at the elderly people or so, then maybe it is worthwhile to look at it also. But these are only 2 or 3 projects in that cluster. We have a budget of 50 million, but industry has to double this figure. So altogether we have 100 million euros for Industry 4.0. And besides that, we have a collaboration with our colleagues from the Ministry of Education and Culture, which do also some projects in that area.
So already one can see the possibility for synergies with what's happening at European level, and we'll talk about that a little later on. Javier Garcia, in Spain, you're the head of the Industrial Leadership Department, Centre for the Development of Industrial Technology. Can you tell us what that is, the Centre of Department of Industrial Technology?
Okay, do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. CDTI is the national agency for funding business in Spain. Almost 80% of our activities directly is funding SMEs. Our industry is in our DNA. I mean, we are funding mainly industry by terms of loans and grants. We are talking about 1 billion euros a year. And other part of the activity of CDTI is to give the Spanish position and to represent Spain in European and international programs. What are we looking now is that most of the SMEs in Spain are not in a very good financial condition. The problem they have is just a lack of capital, working capital. They are not, most of them are not able sometimes to secure sale orders. That's the problem we have. So we are trying to get rid of this problem with new programs, or giving guarantees, or trying to get guarantees for the structural funds and these kinds of things. But okay, the situation is this, and there is another problem. The Spanish SMEs are smaller than the European average, so sometimes they don't have the critical mass to carry out, relevant R&D projects. But anyway, sorry, go please.
Sorry to interrupt. Have you seen a lot of small businesses going out of business? I mean, this must be because you can't give loans to businesses that are not solvent. But so there might be businesses that have got great ideas, but
yeah, no, we try. We have some schemes to give financial aid to these companies. There's some kind of mortality between them. You know, with the crisis has been very deep in some cases, but industry is still remains. They are still living some on the industry with other they have changed their policies but we still have clients at CDTI. We still give 1 billion euros a year, we still have more than 1,500 companies every year that are looking for money to the CDTI, and half of them are new. So something is still living.
And do you feel that it's alive in terms of innovation and embracing ICT? Because obviously, there are lots of small businesses who are not doing anything to do with ICT.
Of course it is. I think that, for example, Spanish SMEs are not, they are very good integrators of technology. Sometimes they are not able to develop components, but they're very, for example, with ICT, they're able to integrate technologies to develop new products and services, so we are happy with that.
And when you hear about an initiative like the I4MS, do you see a way that you could play with that and move and
yes,
and
course.
work with that?
Of course, we are involved in this initiative since we are representative of Spain in Factories of the Future. So we are in. It's an opportunity for the SMEs anyway, because ICT for example for the traditional sector, for example for shoes, for leather, for this kind, they have to apply ICT. We are not talking ICT. We're talking about ICT only for large companies.
Yeah.
We have to translate that for small companies, and is the way for SMEs to survive in the future, I think, is in our opinion.
Okay, thank you. And can we move to Finland now? Okay. Riikka Tuokko is Professor of Tampere University of Technology and the initiator of the Baltic Sea Region Manufacturing Belt. Give us an overview of your region geographically and economically, first of all.
Thank you. Good question. Of course, I'm coming from Finland, so the country of Nokia. So, of course, if you talk about the importance of ICT is, of course, recognized very highly in Finland still. And even if we have lost a lot of direct jobs in manufacturing jobs, because also that Nokia has, the electronics manufacturing industry has gone away very strongly.
Yes, yeah.
Only the Nokia Networks is still making in electronics there, and some small companies. So we have a good basis for ICT and also for manufacturing, especially the Nokia cluster in the good times was very strong. We had a lot of automation there, and even because we are a small country, it was very easy and very fast to build a successful business also in the mechanical engineering industry for let's say producing production equipment for Nokia cluster. And I was personally also strongly involved in that area. But of course now challenges are different, but related to ICT, we are running some programs. So for instance, we have a program, digital national program, we call it digital manufacturing technology, future digital manufacturing technologies and systems, 35 million euro cluster program, where we have around 20 SME companies also involved and so on. That's one point. Now we are preparing at national level industrial internet and 5G program, so it's related strongly into this, but also a little bit wider scope also going to the, let's say, because this 5G is maybe one strength in our also. Yeah. Actually, people who have left Nokia, they have established, I think, that 400 companies like that.
Really?
So there's a lot of companies, ICT companies, of course very small, but related to this sector or this type of research and development. So it's we have a good basis for starting. Also, according to the latest statistic of let's say ranking of World Economic Forum in digitalization and ICT, we are number one in Finland related to the readiness for digitalization and networking of ICT in private sector. In public sector is our problem. In public sector, we are at the level of Bangladesh. But in private sector,
the level of what?
Bangladesh.
Of Bangladesh.
So we are in the bottom in private sector on the top, and on the bottom in the bottom maybe in public sector. And the public sector because of some political reasons, we have had difficult times, and we have not been able to renovate the public sector yet, and that's a big load also for our private sector. But let's see, let's hope for the next period of government.
And what about partnering then amongst the Baltic Sea region, the other countries? Because Finland probably felt when Nokia was alive and well, you probably felt fine, didn't have to bother about anyone else, and things have changed a bit.
Nokia was also outside of Finland, so it's a part of. I think that this morning's presentations from Commission side were underlining the partnership. Partnership is really important. And also the ecosystems, or let's say, like the Professor Gary Pisano in US, who has written a book, Producing Prosperity, Why America Needs Industrial Renaissance, is talking about industrial commons, which is a kind of, let's say, entity of knowledge, capabilities, and everything like that. And he's talking about what is the important, and he's showing very good examples about what has happened in US, why the industrial commons have declined and gone down, and why, and now it's coming back. So good examples, and I think that this is a good book also for everybody of us to read. It's an easy book, but it gives also for policymakers some type of new evidence about what is important actually, and the regional ecosystem is really one of those key topics. How you take care of that. So he claims that there's no natural reasons for the erosion of the industrial commons due to some kind of invisible hands like markets. It's just because of the decision maker, policy makers and managers of the companies who are making the decision and causing the erosion of the industrial commons or ecosystem. And of course, we have been talking, I got a signal from Commission side, from Brussels, about new cohesion policy for this around 2 years ago, and that was the reason, because the criteria for cohesion funding or structural funds will change more to innovation type of things and so on. And also they are talking about that we should have a knowledge transfer and technology transfer from higher developed regions to lower developed regions. On the other side, I had seen clearly how the structural funds are typically used in lower developed countries, which have used a lot of this money, and what the impact is not very clear. So this is also the reason for this policy change, and that's why I was starting to think about that. What if we would make the BSR region, which is also some kind of corridor,
the Baltic Sea region,
Baltic Sea region, yeah, Baltic Sea region. These 9 countries, because manufacturing is very important for them, but also this region has lost 500,000 direct manufacturing jobs during the years since 2008, and we could also help the more developed countries. Could help also for instance, the Baltic countries and so on, for using more efficiently the structural funds in the way that they could also really come to the business, because now they are building, typically they have built centers and so on, but coming to commercialization is not been very good.
So you saw that potential for coming together. Well, we'll talk some more about that in a minute. Maybe we can go to the UK now. Ian Collier, do you think that sorry, you're from Catapult, so just tell us what that is first.
Okay. The Catapult program was something that was set up by the Technology Strategy Board in the UK, which is the UK's innovation agency. And it really had its start back at the beginning of the financial crisis. And there was a real strong realization in the UK that we had allowed the manufacturing industry in the UK to decline. That was part of the problem. Andreas mentioned his 22% contribution to GDP. I think the UK is at around 11 at the moment, so I think if we could get to 22, we'd think we'd done the job probably.
Yes, you could just retire on a beach somewhere.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So there was some consultation work done around a number of renowned industrialists as to what the issue was in the UK and how could we improve the situation. What that recognised was that whilst the UK has world-leading universities, over time we had not capitalised on the output that had come from those universities in the way that some other countries had done. And one of the inputs to that study work was a gentleman by the name of Hermann Hauser, who I think is fairly well regarded. There were also quite a lot of benchmarking exercises done worldwide on centres like TNO and other centres around the globe. And what emerged from that was, we've seen the slide today on the Valley of Death, was that actually what was missing in the UK landscape was an activity which was focused on taking the output of research and getting it to a point of commercialisation where you could attract
so funding. The country hadn't lost its sort of sense of innovation. It was happening somewhere, but never really.
Absolutely, and I mean there are too many stories of the products developed in UK research institutes. I won't list them now, but you can find them readily, which have just gone overseas because financial markets in the UK are quite short term. Don't necessarily have the capability always to evaluate the potentials of the technology. And so we were about sort of opening the door on that again and doing it again in the UK. So the government looked at that situation. It also looked at some of the societal challenges going on, the aging population, the changing nature of cities, the use of space, and came up with a series of catapults. The original program started with 7. It's now 9, and one of those catapults is the high-value manufacturing catapult, which focuses very much on manufacturing industry. We're quite different from the other 8 in that we came about by bringing together 7 technology and innovation centres in the UK, but into one group. So for comparison purposes, if people would recognise the Fraunhofer production cluster, then the high-value manufacturing catapult is almost the Fraunhofer's, very similar in size and scale, perhaps a few less people in there, but similar financial numbers as well.
And is it working? I mean,
absolutely, is it working? I mean, if we look at I suppose the biggest indicator of does industry actually want what we want and what we provide, and what we're fundamentally providing is production scale facilities, things that are necessary but unaffordable for many companies, even large companies in some cases, who are trying to productionize new technology, and the people, the science, the knowledge, the connection to universities that needs to go around that if we want to make it work. Our engagements over the last 12 months, we've engaged with around 1,200 organizations on 900 projects, and of those in an SME environment, we've actually had more than 1,500, close to 1,700 engagements with SME organisations, not all resulting in projects, as you might imagine. And we have an order book going forward of over £200 million, of which 50% is collaborative R&D. So I think if demand is if the customer's voice is a signal that you're producing something they want, then yes, absolutely, it's working.
And where do you see the possibility? I mean, you must have heard things about the I4MS initiative today that seemed to have lots of synergies.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest and say that as a catapult, we're establishing our place in the European landscape, if you like, in terms of what we're trying to do. We're involved in Manufacture, etc., Factory of the Future. We've seen a lot here, I think, which is in fact a strong parallel for the things that we're doing in the UK at the moment. The importance of ICT for industry is recognised even at government level. We have one of the government ministers who chairs what is termed the E-Leadership Council in the UK, and that's all focused on how do you get the academic world, industrialists, the hardware, software providers together, working on how to shape the future environment for e-infrastructure. The Technology Strategy Board themselves run a special interest group on high-performance computing, And in fact, we're also developing a program which we're hoping to go into the budget round in the autumn, which is very much focused on how you get industry engaged in the use of SMEs. And I think Andreas did a very good job of describing what's happening from the technology and what's emerging. But I think it was the gentleman from Pipistrel this morning who said, you know, one of the biggest challenges is how do you actually get industry to take it on board? I think if I go to our universities, there's no shortage of good ideas, novel solutions. We're increasing that. We're investing in a new a Turing Centre, which is being put into the UK, which is to focus on mathematics, the development of new algorithms. I'm expecting also some further investment in special support for big data. And the other part of that is a program which we're looking at to use the centres that have been created with the 7 centres of the Catapult, plus additional investment that has been made since that e-leadership council was formed. The minister has found an additional £350 million to invest in the latest capability, HPC capability, but also connectivity, how you connect up the UK so people can get access to it. So we're looking at a project now which is trying to create a doorway, in effect, for SMEs, not just SMEs, but SMEs plus others who want to get to understand what the benefit might be of using computing capability. But by coming through that one doorway, ultimately they will get access all the way through to the best assets in HPC capability within the UK. So that's really important, and you know, we honestly believe that a strong part of that is that you can't wait for them to come through the door. A big part of that programme has actually got to be to go out and find them.
Find them, yeah.
And the final comment I would say on that, it's find the right ones as well. You know, I understand why we use the SME, you know, as an all gathering phrase, but I think the reality is, if we're honest about it, that there are a portion of SME organisations who are ready, who are prepared to put the effort and resources into finding out and discovering, and also ready then to adopt and actually be in a position where, you know, they can do something with the technology to generate early economic impact for them and for the country as a whole.
So it's getting them at the right stage. So Max Lemke from the European Commission, you're hearing a little snapshot there of what's happening in different countries in Europe, and you obviously got your own all various structures here within the European Union. Is it not getting too complex, or how do you work together? How do you make it work? I mean, you say you need partnership, but how do you get it all to hang together?
Well, let me first comment on where we stand, because we are now 1 year running, and we have started this 1st of July last year, and I would say our networks are running, our projects, the networks of competence centers are running, they are stable, and they are now ready in an environment to collaborate further. So I've put some questions this morning, and I'll repeat some of them, but I think it's quite important to know, yes, it's all running, and we are now also, you said it's a complex undertaking, so we have first experiences with the complexity. Like, for example, we have the infrastructures that are supporting the experiments, that go across experiments, like cloud-based HPC. So HPC resources with a cloud model, they are up to speed, they are running, so we can use them. We have other infrastructures running. We have first experiments have started. You will see some results in the afternoon. So that's now the time to say we have an initiative, and now we can go and talk to others, and how can we link. I think one important achievement is that we have made it to get the first calls for additional experiments out, closed, evaluated. We had huge response, so I think we selected 1 out of 3 to 4 in that, so that assured competition. It come back to the point we have to pick the right ones. Definitely want to pick the good quality, and by getting 4 times as much as you need, usually you are able to get at least some good quality. So we were showing there is interest, and we were able to select good quality. So that is closed. We are now running, and I think now with a stabilizing environment, having 7 of these initiatives running, it's the time to go out like we did here and talk and intensify our talks to you on how we can collaborate and how we can help each other. Yeah, and I think that is an important thing. You cannot do that when you build a structure like this a year ago. You can't talk about everything. No. So we have not talked a year ago about the structural funds. It would have become too complicated. So now we have something running. Now we are discussing how we can link the regions into it and how we can maybe create kind of satellite initiatives funded bottom up from the regions to hook to that and to exploit what we are doing here. Or another point, how we can link to national initiatives and use it, for example, like one of the questions this morning was how can we reach the right target audience? I mean, from Europe to reach them is not that easy. Yes, we have our centers, but these centers we have to see to what extent we can link them with your initiatives, with Catapult, with Industry 4.0, Spanish initiatives or the Baltic ones, to see how we can spread
maybe
the
I
message.
can just bring in some, Andres Godler, you wanted to come in on.
That leads me to the idea maybe to combine more what we are doing in our national in the different countries in Europe. I think, for example, we have this network of what we call e-business competence centers, where small and medium-sized enterprises can go and get producer-neutral information. That is important. They get an overload of ICT buzzwords, and they don't know what does that mean for the company. And then they can go to these competence centers, to some extent connected to chambers of commerce or to Fraunhofer societies, and maybe the idea could be to make this known, what's happening regarding these competence centers from the European Commission and this opportunity to get experiments funded. That is not so known, I suppose. We have more than 3 million small and medium-sized enterprises in Germany as users, and 80,000 ICT developers, SME developer companies. And I think that could be a task to bring this together, because I think it is difficult for the traditional small and medium-sized enterprises from different industrial sites to get to know how they can use big data, how can they use these new opportunities of ICT for the production side, for optimizing the processes and so on.
Yes.
Maybe a small comment also to this, let's say, EC and regions and nations. So I think that I have been very happy and I really appreciate all the messages which have come from Commission side already for 2 years preparing this period. But unfortunately, communication between EC and nations and especially regions has not worked. So the statements which and wishes which have been sent to member states, I have not seen very much actions going in that direction. Good example, just take from smart specialization. This morning I checked how our smart specialization strategy we can see on the smart specialization platform webpage. They are announcing that, and you can select the topic. For instance, there's one topic is manufacturing and industry. And I noticed that even if I heard this week that and now our smart specialization strategy is accepted, Tampere was not there, even if our industry from GDP is more than 30%. So it's also a dictionary of how you understand the different terms and so on. But making this discussion more clear, I think that it's also understanding would be much better then. But if you are talking something, somebody is understanding what you are talking about. So
please, I want to bring in our other speakers from this morning. So please, if you want to join in, please just raise your hand. Yes. Maurizio Gattilio from...
Working? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. I have a comment on the story that Dr. Gödler told us about Adidas. And I think that customization is really bringing back manufacturing near consumers. And this is a key point. Because the scheme in which the low-cost goods are done in developing countries and more added value and high tech are done in developed country, and then all these things, then goods are exchanged through transportation, is probably no more valid. So if we take the example of the shoes, likely in the future there will be stores where you will go there, they will scan your feet, they will go on the back, they will 3D print your shoes, and yes, you will got it. So it's really an important revolution, and that this is something that we have to really consider. I think that in the future, ideas and data will travel through the cloud, not goods all over the planet polluting it.
So it's a whole different business model that's going to be created.
Yeah. Small comment to your let's say, talk about this customization. I really agree that so, but it takes some time. So, for instance, we have been working more than maybe 30 years now, 13 years for desktop manufacturing type of topic. So, especially because we started the times of Nokia also investing in manufacturing. We were talking why we need big machines on the floor, or so why we don't move on the table. But it's a long way, of course this only, but there's also bioproduction, this type of personal bioproducts and so on. Consumer products could be done just on the spot, so that we are talking about point of need manufacturing. And I fully agree that, but to get the breakthrough, there a lot of research has been done, but to get the breakthrough because it needs full industrial basis, also changing the industrial basis, so that there are component manufacturers who are interested to put effort also to make cheap components for very small, tiny size and so on. So that it's a difficult task, but definitely this is the trend, of course.
This morning we were talking about skills being an issue, and the issue of skills within small companies being able to deal with the sort of technology that we're talking about. How much is that an issue in the UK, for instance?
Absolutely, it's an issue in the UK, and I think we have our eye on that at the moment. I can't say that we've got a plan at the moment, but certainly as far as the E-Leadership Council is concerned, that the recognition that you need computational mathematicians coming out of universities and moving into industry is something that is very much on the agenda. How do we develop the skills, and how do we get those people into industry, and particularly manufacturing industry? And I think even today in the UK we lose a high population of our engineering graduates into non-engineering roles. So that's still a challenge for us as we go forward.
And looking in this room, women as well, I mean, you know, where are they?
I wouldn't like to comment, but
no.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're not in any way partisan in who we train
I'm
or
sure
what we
you
take.
know, I'm sure you're not,
but I think that's, you know, I think there's a whole range of skills, and certainly from a UK perspective, it may be wider and deeper beyond ICT, which is what we're focusing on here today, because clearly if you've only got 11% of your GVA being produced in manufacturing, if you want to double it, you need a lot more of other people as well. So we've got a really broad challenge on ourselves.
Well, what do you think, Max?
I think we have another dimension which is nowadays not strongly exploited, and that is that we have all our software capacities all over Europe, also in regions maybe that are suffering from the crisis, or in regions that are less developed but where we have well-educated people. And when it comes to the full value chain and we need to develop software, I mean, we do not necessarily need to do it where we are having our production, where we have our clusters in individual application areas, we can link them from everywhere. And I think the means we have available nowadays allows us to do that. And I think networks like these can help us also go a bit into that direction through competence centers, for example, who have the right skills.
I would, just a comment if I may, I think you're absolutely right, Max. I think if you can go to the experts in that process, that's great. I think when you talk about SMEs, one of the things the SMEs need is the confidence within the organisation to interface with the people that you're talking about. So, I think we've got to get a higher level capability in more of the smaller organisations. And there's a role, we perceive there's a role for government and for potentially working with programs like I4MS to actually help us do that. And so that we raise that calibre. They've got to have the confidence to have that conversation, otherwise they won't go there.
Can I just bring Wolfgang Gries in on this, because you've got your links with Silicon Valley. I mean, traditionally this was the case, wasn't it? That that Silicon Valley was considered to be the ultimate. Everyone was there in one huge cluster, all feeding on that sense of innovation and the excitement of it all. But it was a very human thing, despite the IT base to it. And in London, I think they've got something called Silicon Roundabout or something. Do you think that the geography does still matter, that it helps to have people in the same area thinking and sort of breathing the same air? Or, as Max said, does it really not matter anymore?
I mean, as my experience in Silicon Valley is that geography really still matters. The personal network in this area, especially for in my industry, was very important. In terms of recruiting, for example, especially in this area, there are a number of photonics companies, and it's maybe a little bit special for the American style to hire. You potentially hire from competitors, and they're around the corner. And in our company, for example, we have people they moved around from competitors to competitors. We hired expertise sometimes from competitors. That's my experience in Silicon Valley.
Okay, well that's interesting. Geography matters. Reka, what do you think in the Baltic area? And then.
Maybe also in Baltic area, but more generally. So I picked one statement of Professor Pisano's book. So the statement one is that if the country loses the capability of manufacture, it loses also the ability to innovate. And he shows with good examples how, for instance, US has lost some key manufacturing industries too far, and now they are coming back. Even Samsung is now investing, making a new plant in US for semiconductor. So it's coming, but and Google is building a plant in Texas for Motorola smartphones, and Apple is building a factory for 2,000 people in US. So it's coming back, but we have lost a lot of, let's say. We have had a lot of losses due to poor decisions.
Fuad Arkadi, you wanted to come in?
Yes, I'm not sure. It is working?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. My comment is, if I take the landscape of the CAE, computer-aided engineering, what I see today...
Can you just put the microphone a little closer?
Yeah, the computer-aided engineering. The major player is still 50%, more than 50% European. So here we have good leverage to build on. And we have a very good opportunity now. But I was listening to what we said, that we have things is working. It is working on leveraging HPC on cloud computing, but as in the past. We have to think one step further and to think what will be the next platform which will make convergence of the design of the product and the manufacturing, as we said in the morning. And this is today, it does not exist. And this is very good opportunity to jump on this new platform to secure the manufacturing in Europe and to make it more attractive and more competitive.
So what's the next step in terms of platforms? Did you want to come in on the other
skills?
The skills question
maybe.
first.
That is also in Germany really an issue. We have a lack of a shortage of informatic students, especially also women. Only 12% of the informatic students are women, so that's far too low. We have really an issue to fill the gaps, to find people for these new challenges, to introduce ICT in the small and medium-sized enterprises. But even in the Silicon Valley, when I was there last year, it was interesting to see, everybody told me, Google takes all the well-educated people from Stanford University and so on, and say, what do they do? The research and development department, to some extent, is in Germany or in Europe, not in the Silicon Valley. I don't know whether this is, holds true for many firms, but I think there is a trend even in the Silicon Valley. Only the large companies get the well-educated people, and the smaller one have really problems. And that is especially true in Germany, where we see it's easier to get a job if you are well educated in Siemens or in a large company or Bosch or so. And it's much more difficult for the small and medium-sized enterprises. But maybe one example, which is interesting to see, we don't know exactly what the requirements, the job requirements are for Industry 4.0. That is not really, that's not pretty clear. Some people say you need mechatronics, some people say you need more informatics, you have to be, you have to know how to manage big data and so on. And so it's a kind of mixture, and there is now a new platform called Academy Cube, maybe you have heard about it, where they try to introduce in the internet new courses, MOOC, massive open online courses, for the first definition, for the definition of, and for the qualification for students in Europe to go there and to get some special certifications for Industry 4.0. And this, for example, there are some courses run by Bosch and also by IBM and some other companies. SAP too is here on the board. We talked, it was also a talk with the European Commission about opportunities to enlarge that, but I think that we are still in its beginning. We don't know exactly what in the future is really needed in the companies. That has to be found out, and one of the ways is such a platform established by private industry itself, and I think that is interesting, an interesting example for trying to attract people, young students, for these new topics.
Mm-hmm. Can we move back to the point made by Fuad Al-Khaldi? I hope I understood, but it's sort of moving up the sort of the next generation in terms of the cloud, and I mean, am I understanding this correctly about in terms of what happens in the next platform? Yeah,
the idea is we need to rethink our platform to put the product and the manufacturing and to leverage all the ICT, in particular the cloud, the HPC on cloud, yes. And this will lower, or this will create opportunity for a new skill.
I see, yes, okay.
Academy Cube is a kind of a cloud computing. If you have this MOOC courses there, that is cloud, it's a cloud-based initiative. I'm sure that cloud computing can be one of the instruments to help to bring the latest knowledge about technologies for many people, to train them. That's pretty clear.
I don't have any doubt that the future is cloud-based. Yeah. What I do have a doubt about is what time frame we're talking about, and particularly from the smaller SME population. I think early experience will be key in actually giving them the confidence to use it. I think we've got interesting questions on security still to be resolved in some places, but some of that may be more about fear than reality. So I think there's quite a few things to be addressed, and I think it'll be a blend of capability over time.
Yeah.
But on security, is it fear rather than reality? I mean, aren't there some very real security issues?
I think you can only, the press clearly often make big issues about it. I think there are examples. I'm sure there are a lot smaller examples. It's not my field of expertise, but it is something that within the programme I mentioned that we're hoping to see support from the UK government for towards the end of the year. We'll be putting much more focus on what that means for smaller businesses.
Okay, yes.
I think that especially in product development area, because this type of distributed development all around global approach is okay, but I'm not sure what happens with the manufacturing, and I have a feeling that the European high-tech products in many cases, if you really want to make the breakthrough also in the product technology, but also manufacturing process technologies using the latest ones and possible. So there's a big value also the closeness of product development and manufacturing development and manufacturing itself. So in that case, we are not able to do everything globally. So in some key parts of the product development and business development, we need the closeness of the manufacturing, close to the product development.
Yes, Gregor Webel from Pipistrand.
Yeah, if I may just comment, I have the unique opportunity, since I also teach physics at the university, to have a view of both worlds. And when we are talking now about manufacturing SMEs and what they perceive as, for example, research. I mean, for example, university world and the SME world have completely different concept about what research is. And this is where usually the problem comes because of the language, what anybody expects from each other. I mean, as an SME, what you typically expect is a fairly mature technology before you adopt it. However, what we are doing here is, of course, innovative research projects. And this is also one of the reasons why it's hard to get SMEs on board, because this is at the technology readiness level, which is not suitable for them yet, usually. I mean, we like to be at the edge of things also with research. Maybe we have a better sense of what will be available in the future. But for most SMEs, they really, for manufacturing SMEs I'm talking about, they would really prefer maybe to enter at the point where technology is much more mature and to adopt it, rather than at this stage. Probably at this stage, what you would need to attract is like SMEs who are not maybe selling directly to are not manufacturing, but are actually developing these technologies that maybe manufacturing SMEs can use later on. So maybe to attract more like developers of software, people like this, that will then enable these technologies to be adopted by manufacturing SMEs at the next step.
Ulrich from the Fraunhofer, can I bring you in on this?
Sort of. I was just looking at you because that really reminds me of this competence center role, to give access to this knowledge that's being generated, to be transparent about what has been achieved, so also to attract people who are perhaps not on this path towards IT, but perhaps also to find their role within these new initiatives, within the new game of making production more versatile, more flexible and faster. So I think in that area there's still quite a lot to do. Perhaps also new interfaces are needed, from education to these competence centers or to transfer organizations to make that work. And
I mean, how accessible do you feel that you are? I mean, in terms of language, for instance, you know, again, small businesses like to be able to speak their own language on the whole?
I think there are two things with respect to language. One is the nationality of the language, so if it's German, French, English, Spanish or whatever, I think these competence centers have to connect to the local area, because in most SMEs, at least as far as we can judge that, you do not always have people being able to speak English or being able to speak another foreign language in order to get access to this knowledge that is cited somewhere. And the other thing is what Gregor just mentioned, the level of speech, so the technology level at which you're communicating. Yeah. So if we have some basic research, then an SME will never, you just said that, will never adopt that because it's just too risky. And I think this I4MS initiative just takes out this risk of having this large gap from basic research to something where the SME can really make a product from in the end.
Max, you wanted to come in?
I would agree. I think we cannot overemphasize the role of the competence centers in the whole initiative and also in the link to the regional initiatives. We as Commission, we can only put a framework. We can put money on the table and we can say now, because you're organized differently in member states and regions, we organize you this way and now go ahead. But the oil in the machinery, the one who puts the oil in, are the competence centers. And I remember our discussion this morning. What is a competence center? And the answer was quite complex. A competence center has to have technology expertise, it has to have application expertise, it must know how SMEs work, what they need, must be able to talk the right language, not only in language of German or English or French or Spanish or Finnish, but also language in terms of try to bring a computer scientist together with an application engineer. They may talk two languages, though they both speak German. And I think this is the kind of role, and probably not one competence center cannot have them all.
No.
So it's important, and the most important thing is also that these competence centers do not feel as competition with each other, because you can have competitive centers, but rather work together and see the added value by working together and sharing their competences, but because only together, bringing them all together will work.
But Ulrich, you hinted this morning you felt there was competition inevitably between these, important institutions.
Yes, I mean all these competence centers or research centers have to be funded, so they have to do some sort of business. Be it publicly funded research business or be it direct industry development projects. So they have to, everyone who is working there has to pay the bread in the end of the day. So yes, again, this platform creates the opportunity to work